Happy Friday. Hope everyone's well on this very sunny and warm afternoon. It feels like we're doing these videos every single day at the moment, just down to the grind of fixtures that Norwich City are coming under. And it's the relatively long trip to Hull facing us tomorrow afternoon. Doesn't look that far on a map, but when you sort of put it through all the Lincolnshire roads, it's not the greatest route to get there. And it involves the Humber Bridge, Connor, which you're not a massive fan of bridges, if I'm right in saying.
No, if as a general rule, if my feet are off the ground, I'm not happy. So anything that is that high in the air. I've also been speaking to Paddy today, and the press box is also right at the back of one of the stands in the upper tier. So you might have to provide some words of comfort for me throughout the day tomorrow, because I think there's going to be a lot of height involved.
In terms of the words of comfort there you picked up on, I will bring you the team news to start the show. Obviously, a bit of a mixed one, really. Obviously, Sam McCallum is the biggest one there. We saw him obviously go off injured on Tuesday night in that cup fixture against Birmingham, and you felt like it was his opportunity. Obviously, Dimitris Giannoulis suffered ligament damage in that game against Wigan, and it really felt like, young Sam McCallum was going to get his opportunity this time round. And obviously, it's been is it a fifth metatarsal injury, Connor? Looks like he's going to be back after the World Cup. He's had surgery yesterday afternoon. Just how big a blow is that for Sam McCallum?
Oh, massive. I mean, you look at his last year, I think he had it wasn't a similar injury in terms of where it is on the body, but in terms of length of time, he had a similar injury at QPR last season that didn't affect his progression too much. I think he still went on to win Young Player of the Year, but almost robbed him of that valuable game time that he would have got. And no doubt, I'm sure, obviously, when he saw Dimitris Giannoulis go down, I'm sure there was a lot of sympathy for his colleague and friend. But by the same token, it presented a really good opportunity for him, and probably the one that he'd been waiting for a few years. And I think we were all kind of anticipating watching him and seeing how he kicked on and how he went with it, because I think we've seen over the last few years a player who has developed into a left back that's very good at this level. And it was now about doing it for Norwich City when that opportunity arose. And I spoke to him after the Durham game, which is the very first pre-season friendly, and he spoke about how it would be important to kind of rotate those positions because of the sheer amount of games, and it's documented really in the next fortnight that Norwich City have, when it is pretty much, it obviously play tomorrow, next Tuesday, next Friday, then the Tuesday again, then the Saturday. That's a lot of games in a 2-week period. And Norwich are now basically going into it with not a recognised senior left back available, one right back available, an essential midfielder who's going to be playing left back, which I'm sure, we'll delve into all the various ramifications of. But it's on a personal level a real shame for him, because he would have started that cup game. And I've seen kind of a lot of people going, oh, well, why did he start that game? And it was actually through necessity, because Norwich didn't really have a right back option other than Max Aarons, so Sorensen had to play there, and he was the only natural left back option, so he had to play and was probably scheduled to play anyway before the Giannoulis injury. So yeah, it's a blow for him, it's a blow for Norwich City, and it probably begs a few questions again that we're going to get into right now onto what happens next and where they go from here.
Yeah, obviously, anyone you're watching us on any platform, keep putting your comments into the comment section below, whatever platform you're watching on, and we'll get around to those sort of in the second half of the show. Just bringing up the rest of the team news, Connor. Obviously, I'll sort of give a little bit of a run through. Adam Eder obviously missing for this one. Obviously, that was some fluid he had taken off his knee last weekend. Obviously, did play for the under-23s against Ipswich, didn't he, a few weeks back? But one we're probably waiting a couple more weeks to see. Sam Byram, very positive news on his front. Obviously, looks like he's going to be back for that Millwall home game next Friday night, which, bearing in mind sort of the lack of squad depth at Norwich, you've got a fullback at the moment. That's definitely one that's positive news. Todd Campbell is going to be back for this one. Obviously missed the middle of the week. Was at rolled ankle in training, I believe. So that's one looks like he's going to be back in the squad. Ben Gibson as well. He's back for this one. Obviously missed during the week as well. And just Jonathan Rowe and Tony Spring at the other ones, which have been sort of slightly more longer term. Jonathan Rowe, we don't really know the time frame on that one, but that's obviously a stress-related injury with his shin. And obviously Isaac Hayden's the other one who we've not seen feature so far this season. But just picking up on that sort of fullback positions, Connor, obviously it looks like Jacob Sorensen is going to be deputising as a left-back tomorrow afternoon. Obviously we saw him featuring at fullback the other night in the Cup, and we've also seen that obviously in the 2021 title-winning season. Obviously played left-back for a sustained period of that season. So how confident are you in his abilities of playing left-back? Obviously Smith referenced him as a poly filler the other day in his press conference and said that Jacobs Lungi has basically said to him that he's willing to play anywhere. So can he play anywhere? Can he play left-back?
Yeah, on the evidence of kind of his last outing there, I think probably the question would be more kind of the viability of it on a long-term basis. I think you'd look at it and say it's probably not ideal for a prolonged period, and it's now obviously looking like that, certainly for the next 8 weeks, but possibly even longer. When you consider McCallum's out until after the World Cup break, we're looking at sort of December time, aren't we? Which is a major, major blow. I think you'd probably be more comfortable with him as cover in that position. I think there's also kind of a tactical element to it, which is he's right-footed. He's kind of a right-footed left back. So the inclination then, when he's in that position, certainly in possession, is almost to take the ball inside a lot. So Dean Smith will have to kind of work out a balance with that, whether it's structurally changing the way they play through teams to kind of make them more central on one side. I remember seeing a graph of his kind of passing. It was a map kind of Norwich's general direction of passing in various positions, and obviously it took the average of each player, and they were all, this was 2 years ago in the title winning season, they were all fairly progressive until it got to Sorensen's, which was kind of more sort of that way going into the pitch. It's not a major issue if you can balance it off, but obviously we saw last weekend Milo Rashica switch to the right. I think you'd probably want a natural winger out there, but then he's right-footed, so he'd want to come inside as well. Does that work as a balance? I think there's a lot of questions around it, but yeah, I think from a defensive perspective, you would trust him in that role. I think he's a player who seems to have this natural ability of just kind of understanding situations. You can kind of drop him in, and this is why I think he's so good in terms of his versatility, because you can drop him into situations, and he's an intelligent enough footballer to kind of read and adapt to that situation pretty seamlessly. That being said, what Norwich won't necessarily have is the attacking elements that they got from Dimi Yanulis. They won't get the kind of overlapping and underlapping runs. I think he'll be a bit more conservative in his approach. Again, not necessarily a bad thing, but you need to balance it off and you need to be aware of it. So I think there's pros and cons to it, but it's a position that he's proven he can play in before. If he continues to score goals like he did on Tuesday night, then as far as I'm concerned, he can have that. He can have that role on a permanent basis. But obviously, for me, the wider point is kind of the cover. Probably not. I wouldn't even limit this to the left back area. I'd broaden it out to the right back area as well, because as things stand, Norwich City have one right back in Max Aarons and Jacob Sorensen playing left back. And they don't really have any options beyond that because obviously Sam Byram is out injured. So that raises questions for me as well about, obviously we've got a few weeks left of the window, whether they're going to delve back in. I think at this moment in time, it's hard to see how they don't, if I'm being completely honest, because they're extremely light. And Dean Smith said this today, feels that they're a bit top heavy in terms of their squad. They've got a lot of midfield and attacking options and fewer in defence. I mean, if you were stepping back and looking at it, they probably would need maybe a left back who could play centre back to cover off that area as well. So yeah, it's a really complex one. To get two injuries in the same area at the same time feels like it happens a lot for Norwich City. This is just bad luck because they're two kind of contact injuries. I've been Googling today, fifth metatarsal. It's kind of the long bone on the outside of your foot. So that's painful. And it just came from kind of an innocuous, I don't know, someone, it looked to me like a coming together where someone stood on his foot, as Yanulis's was, a coming together where his foot kind of gets stuck in the turf the wrong way. So yeah, I'm a bit concerned about the long-term viability of it. I'm a bit concerned about the lack of depth they have in those positions. I like Sam Byram as a footballer. I think, Norwich fans have seen enough from him to show his quality, but obviously the caveat is his fitness and whether he can sustain that. Dean Smith said today that they're going to give it a couple of weeks really till the Millwall home game, see where they are then. That's when Sam Byram's expected to return. I think if we get to a stage where he's still unavailable, I think that will then force them into the market. But as things stand, I think we're in a bit of a holding pattern now. They'll wait to see how Sorensen gets on. They obviously wait to see how Sam Byram progresses. And then in the background, of course, we've got Max Aarons. And when there's a transfer window open, people are going to speak about Max Aarons' future. We know this. They have done for the last 4 years. So that in itself isn't particularly secure. So you look now at their fullback positions and they've gone from an area of real strength where they could let Bali Mumba go out on loan to now looking pretty short. And that's through no fault of their own and through no fault of Dean Smith's. It's just circumstance. But it's now about how they respond to that. And it feels to me clear that they're going to take a bit of time to react to that.
Yeah, I think a lot of Norwich fans off social media reactions so far maybe do feel that Norwich do need to dip into the market. Obviously, just looking through the comments we've got so far. I mean, Terry Wogan TV, great name there. He's saying Jamal Lewis, would he fancy a loan? Craig Brooks as well has picked up on the fullback position there. Sorensen's a makeshift. Byram's obviously injury prone. It feels that maybe Norwich need to dip into the market as well. Obviously, you kind of just sort of alluded to it, Connor, but do you really feel maybe towards the latter stages of this window, if Norwich maybe haven't got, sort of the cover they need at fullback in terms of Byram sort of consistently back? Obviously, you kind of just said, but do you think they are going to dip into the market? And what sort of transfer would you maybe expect to see? Would it be maybe a free agent or a loan move?
Yeah, I mean, I could see a loan, very, very short-term loan, to be honest with you, until January. I think that would cover them off. To be honest, on the way back from Colney, me and Paddy were talking about Jamal Lewis. I mean, that is again, speculating more than anything, but that's a wonderful shout, I think, in terms of where he's at in his career at this moment and where Norwich City are. I mean, to be honest, Adam, I find it really difficult to think of a situation now where they don't dip into the market, because even if Sam Byram is fit and is there, he's viewed as someone who can kind of cover all the defensive positions, and you're only ever then one injury, one suspension away from him being required in a different area. So they're very light on bodies. They obviously let Crystal Zinman leave in the centre-back area. So you'd imagine if Sam Byram does get back to full fitness, he's going to be someone viewed as a player who can cover there. Right back as well, there are plenty of games. We saw Max Aarons limp off, although he's obviously fine now. That was more of a contact injury. The left back area as well. So at some point, Sam Byram is going to play, and that's not necessarily going to come at left back. So for me, it feels, if they could get another one in that area, as I said, one that could maybe cover off two positions at once, whether that's a fullback who could play both areas or centre back as well, that would be ideal. I think it's increasingly difficult in the modern game to get a left back who can play a centre back because of the nature of the way those positions have evolved. I'd be shocked if we got to the end of the window and Norwich hadn't added a left back on loan, just to give them a little bit of cover until the two return. Because also you've got this situation where, because they're quite complex injuries, both of them, one's ligament damage and one's fracture of a bone in the foot, they can maybe take a little bit longer sometimes than you expect. They can also, worth saying, they can also be not as long as you expect. And the fact Dimi Yanulis doesn't need surgery is good news, obviously, but still looking at 8 weeks out. So that's still a significant portion of Championship football that he's going to miss. We'll have to consult a calendar, or maybe someone can let us know when 8 weeks' time would be. But that's 2 months, isn't it? So you're looking at October maybe as a return. That's not too long before the World Cup break. So even until then, they're going to need cover. I think when you consider all of those factors, I think they'll have to dip into the market because, and I've seen it raised on here as well, even if Sam Byram is fit, there's this doubt. And again, it's not his fault, but because he's had many fitness issues in the last 2 years, 3 years really, even if he is fit, there's always this kind of nagging doubt in the back of your mind of, okay, what if his body breaks down again? What if there's an injury? So just in terms of getting another option in, it does feel like increasingly that's the direction they're going to have to go in. Fortunately, they've obviously got a bit of time. We're sat here on the 12th of August. The window doesn't close until September the 1st, I think. So they've got pretty much enough time now to almost sit and, as I said, assess until Millwall, see what the situation looks like, then look at how Yanulis and McCallum are recovering, and then almost make a decision with 2 weeks left of the window, when you would then be able to go out and manufacture a loan if you needed to from most likely a Premier League club, but also abroad. So the good thing is they've got time on their side. As I said, I'd be absolutely shocked if we got to the end of the window and Norwich City hadn't added a left back in some shape or form. I would expect a loan.
Yeah, just picking up on your sort of point of loans there, Stephen Noakes, I want to pronounce that surname as. We have 2 loans from home. Am I right in saying we can't get any more homegrown players, obviously on loan? I suppose he's referring to the English market there in terms of loans.
I would have to look up the rules. I think that's definitely the case for Premier League. I think the EFL is slightly different. I think it's more about you can have, there isn't a set number of loans that you can have in the EFL. Certainly last time I checked, so don't quote me on this, but you have to name 5 in the matchday squad, I think, if that's right. And obviously within that, there might be rules and regulations around kind of how many of those can be domestic compared to abroad. So that's something that we'll dig into and get an answer for you. But I think the ones you're looking at is Premier League rules. I'll actually check that now when you start speaking again.
Yeah, so moving away obviously from those defensive areas, I suppose there's maybe a little bit of question marks over who Smith's going to play. I suppose depends on the formation, but maybe that sort of three behind Pukki. I feel like Sinani obviously really put in a great performance there against Birmingham in the Cup. Obviously, Milot Rashica has come in for a little bit of criticism based on his early performances. I feel like Todd Cantwell's maybe been one of the standouts so far, based on my opinion anyway, in terms of looking quite hungry for it again. And that's obviously only a positive for Norwich. And obviously, Kieran Dow got his opportunity as well in the Cup the other night. So there's a lot of players in those attacking areas that are fighting for those starting positions. How do you sort of see this one, Connor, in terms of the three that maybe start behind Pukki? Obviously, that's suggesting that he's going to play a 4-2-3-1 or obviously plays 4-3-3. Which players do you maybe play in those wide positions?
I think he will go with what he went with at Wigan in terms of Cantwell and Rashica, because I think there was enough in that performance to suggest there'd been a step forward. For me, the more interesting bits are kind of the central midfield elements, because suddenly, obviously, Jakob Sorensen is going to play at left back. That's probably a given. So he drops out of midfield. Norwich are then without really kind of what we describe as a natural defensive midfield option, a number 6 option as such. We've seen Kenny McLean do that role. So I think, is he going to drop back into a more defensive role? And then are we going to see Gabriel Sara partner him with Marcelino Nunez ahead of him in kind of this 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1? I could see that quite viably. I guess the interesting one to throw in now is Danel Sinani. Did he do enough on Tuesday night to push out Milo Rashica? That's obviously something that Dean Smith will have to weigh up. And similarly to Max Aarons, really, for as long as there's a transfer window open and Milo Rashica is a Norwich City player, there's going to be speculation. And we've seen that already. I think it was Sky who were carrying the story last week about Borussia Mönchengladbach being in attendance to watch him at Carrow Road. From kind of what we can gather, that was the case, which is intriguing for lots of reasons, not least because of who Mönchengladbach's head coach is. But yeah, the thing is with Rashica is, I think everyone can see, and I wrote my column on this last week actually, he's capable of producing a feeling, and the feeling is, as soon as he does something, i.e. goal or assist, he's going to burst into life. There's going to be an explosion. He's going to be a wonderful player who's going to tear up the championship. But actually, until he does that, it is just a feeling. And I did think he looked better against Wigan. There was obviously the assist that was well weighted. Actually showed a real bit of quality in the final third, which Norwich hadn't shown in before that point, really. So yeah, I think there was enough strides forward in terms of that front four. So Cantwell on the left, Rashica on the right with Nunez behind Pukki. Obviously, the only thing that I would throw in is kind of what I spoke about around Sorensen, and whether Smith feels that because he's right-footed and because his kind of nature to pass inside, whether that makes him more inclined to maybe swap Rashica and Cantwell over. Because I think actually whoever you play there is going to want to drift a little bit inside. And so you lose a little bit of width on that side, I think, whichever direction you go in. So whether he feels he needs to balance that off with a real left footer, I suppose, is probably the thing that he will be debating. We know he likes to balance his teams. And to me, if you play Sorensen and Cantwell on that side, it probably feels like there's a little bit of a lack of balance because Sorensen wants to come inside and a winger wants to come inside. And from an attacking and possessional perspective, it makes everything quite narrow. So that's a problem that he will have to solve. I'm fascinated to see how he goes about it. But yeah, in terms of that front four, I think they've done just about enough to step forward. Obviously, Josh Sargent and Danel Sinani will be hoping to continue to knock on the door and kind of push their case forward. I think probably Sinani is probably ahead of Sargent in that kind of debate at this moment in time because of what he did on Tuesday night in the Cup.
Yeah, so that's one position that Smith is relatively blessed in terms of the attacking areas. Lots of options there. Obviously talked about that squad depth this morning. Just picking up on our point about when you knew this would be back, Phoebe's commented saying it's around about the 8th of October. Preston at home, and I'll just pick up on the comment. It's Craig Brown talking about Unulis. Yeah, Unulis got a little bit more of an update on him this morning. No surgery. Obviously, that's ligament damage, and the initial time frame was a minimum of 8 weeks. So, yeah, that kind of links back to that question. Just on the opponents for tomorrow, Connor, obviously Hull City, they've been a little bit of I suppose they've been a bit inconsistent, a little bit like Norwich in their sort of early performances. They ground out that late 2-1 win against Bristol City at home on the opening day of the season. They then went to Preston and drew 0-0, and they got dumped out of the Cup the other night by Bradford. So a little bit there, sort of inconsistent in sort of the similar manner to what Norwich have. And I spoke to a Hull fan on Terrace Talk this week, and he was kind of saying that their performances have been very up and down, which I think you can probably label it on Norwich City as well. So, what have you made of Hull so far? Obviously, they've had a complete sort of refresh and reshuffle in the way they've got new owners there, obviously a relatively new manager and a lot of new sort of players as well. Ozan Tufan, obviously a man that Norwich were linked with last summer in the Premier League. Obviously he's gone in there, who's sort of after a bit of a failed loan spell at Watford, and a few other sort of relatively sort of big signings. Seri obviously done very well at Fulham as well. So what do you sort of make of Hull? Obviously, a little bit of an unknown quantity. I don't really think anyone knows where Hull are going to finish in the Championship this season, because it could go really, really well or really, really terrible. So what do you make of them?
Yeah, when I was thinking about them in the summer, actually, they were the team that I thought could finish anywhere between 1st and 24th, because of obviously everything that we spoke about. They made some really eye-catching signings on paper. I think the nature of their rebuild probably has created that up and down nature to performances, and I think Norwich fans are all too familiar with that. Obviously, under in kind of the early stages of Daniel Farke's reign, where there was a similar type of thing. They're quite similar to what Wolves were trying to do, but obviously the Turkish owners want to take it in a direction where there's a lot of Turkish-based players, which again is really interesting, because I think the hit rate from that level of football in that country is quite hit and miss in terms of players coming over here and being a real success. I watched a bit of their game or highlights of their game on opening day, and they played some really good stuff at times. But again, it's the consistency point. They've clearly got some really good quality in their side, as we've spoken about. So I think this will be a real test for Norwich, actually, and against a team who, as we said, a little bit of an unknown quantity. The manager is only now really implementing his style, and with a group of players that has kind of been thrown together. Jacob Greaves is a really good footballer. I really like him. They obviously had Lewis King Potter, didn't they? But he's gone to Brentford. He was a very intelligent footballer as well. So they've got some good attacking players in there, good players all round, some unknown players as well. So I think probably Dean Smith is going to be heading there like Norwich did to Cardiff, probably wondering what they're going to encounter, really. Because the more I kind of see of Hull, the more you think that you could probably rule them out of finishing near the bottom. I think they're probably going to be mid to upper half team. Where that translates to in terms of, is it going to be automatic promotion? I think probably unlikely, but certainly a shout for the playoffs if they get things clicking in the right direction. So this is a real test. I think it's probably a step up from what Norwich have faced in their opening 2 games, if I'm being completely honest. And it's going to be really interesting to see how they deal with that, because we've spoken about Norwich at length, and it feels like, and someone used this term yesterday, it feels like they're threatening to be a good team. And maybe there's obviously a lot of factors around confidence and obviously tactical elements as well that they need to pull together before that becomes a reality. It's a tough place to go, Hull. And Norwich have found in the last 2 seasons, I think, when they've played them at this level, I don't think they've won either. They lost one, didn't they, which was the 4-3 epic. And there was a draw in their midweek draw that was pretty drab. So, it's going to be interesting, I think, to gauge where this Norwich team is, but also where this Hull team is, because if they come and produce a performance and beat Norwich City, I think a lot of people will be speaking about them not as an unknown quantity, but as a bit of a surprise package, and maybe it flips a little bit. So that's the expectation that Norwich are dealing in at this moment in time. I think from Dean Smith's perspective, I think he's desperate for a win at this stage. And I think everyone associated with Norwich City is desperate for a win. So you go there and try and take whatever you can. But if Norwich play with the quality that we know they have, which, again, they did for long spells against Wigan without maybe the quality in the final third, if they can find that little bit, then I don't think there's anyone in this division that you would really think, yeah, okay, then on paper they've got a better squad than Norwich. So that's where they will go. They will go hopefully with a bit more confidence after, it wasn't really a win on Tuesday night, but after progressing to the next round of the Cup. And it's a funny thing, football, because a couple of performances can lift everyone a little bit. And it does feel, and Pad put this to Dean Smith today, after Tuesday night, everyone's been lifted a little bit, internally and externally. And maybe we'll find out tomorrow whether that Wigan performance, that Cup performance for long periods is something that Norwich can produce consistently, or whether it was a one-off. So these are things that we're looking for. But I think Norwich will travel there feeling like they can win the game and feeling confident. So sort of obviously one thing feeling that and another thing doing it. So let's hope they can do the latter tomorrow.
They also travel there wearing a new kit. Obviously, that was released this morning at 9 a.m, the third shirt. Sort of a tie-dye, pinky, sort of green, bluey sort of colour. I'm sure everyone has seen it by now. So a couple of questions on that, Connor. Obviously, thoughts on the new kit. I mean, I don't mind it. I think it's quite out there, it's different. And I'm going to tie that to next question we get there. Martin's question there. Important question. Which shirt is your favourite? I mean, I'm going to go out there and say the home shirt's still my favourite. I think the sort of the classic element to it, I'm a bit of a one for the past. So I think the classic element of the home shirt is what I like. So I'll throw it over to you, Connor. What do you think of the third shirt, and which one's your favourite from the 3 they've released this season?
Yeah, I'll answer the second one first. Home kit's my favourite. I think it's one of the best kits Norwich have produced. To be honest, certainly in my lifetime. Just everything about it is classy, isn't it? And I think universally it's been met with pretty wide acclaim. The away kit, I'm neither here nor there on. I've got to be honest. I think it's fine. The third kit, I mean, I don't know how well this has come through. But this is actually a pink shirt, so anything with pink on is a major winner for me. Really like it. Wouldn't go as far as to say it's my favourite, but probably my second favourite of the 3. And yeah, I think if you understand and like fashion, obviously like I do, then that kit becomes you like that kit, but. I know I know because we were sat in a room of people before the press conference speaking about it, and it was actually I like it, I don't like it, and it was bouncing around a bit like that. But that's what a third kit should be, I think. But yeah, I was told it was going to be tie dye a few weeks ago, and it was I was a bit intrigued about what that actually looked like. But I really like it. Yeah, I do really like it. And if I was going to buy one, even though the home kit's my favourite, I'd probably steer towards the third one because of the uniqueness of it. So yeah, that answers it hopefully. But the home one's probably still my favourite, which contradicts itself.
Yeah, we'll delve into the comments now for sort of the last 10-15 minutes of the show. I'll bring up this point, Connor. Young Liam Gibbs, a really impressive sort of, over 90-minute period in terms of him, and then the penalty as well, which, as you kind of said, I think it was arguably the best penalty of the lot, as much as Nunez's penalty got all the credit for the kind of, to have the balls to step up and do that at that stage in the game was quite impressive. What did you make of his performance? And do you think he's in the window for a start tomorrow? Obviously, we know that Norwich are a little bit lighter now in that midfield with Sorensen having to step back and play left back. And obviously, we know that Sarah's still kind of building up his fitness. Is there an opportunity for Liam Gibbs tomorrow at the Hull City Stadium?
Well, I think that second point, crucially, is probably where I am with it, because if Gabriel Sara is fit enough to start, for me, it's just simply pushing McLean back into that 6 role and then unleashing Gabriel Sara, so to speak. But yes, he's an option. I'm probably over this summer, I've become one of the biggest Liam Gibbs fans there are around. And actually, you watch the penalties back, if we're being honest with ourselves, Liam Gibbs' penalty is probably better executed than Marcelino Nunez's. It's just the audacity and personality in Nunez's that made it so impressive. But to do a 2-step run up, I think he was was he the second penalty after Kenny McLean had missed? To do a 2-step run up and stick it in the top corner of the net at 19 years of age on your senior Norwich City debut, that takes some guts. Really impressive execution, and it's not just the penalty; it's his overall game as well. He can. So I'll give an anecdote from Cambridge. He came on the pitch. Norwich looked a bit disjointed from an attacking perspective, and he received the ball on his back foot and played forward. And it's very simple, but also not every midfield player does it. And when you can play in limited touches and you can progress the ball up the pitch, particularly given the issues that Norwich have had from a creative perspective, I think he really does add something. That being said, I think it would be a hell of a risk at this moment in time to throw him in at the deep end into Championship football. That's not to say that maybe Dean Smith isn't brave enough to do it. I do think, however, if this was Daniel Farke, it probably becomes a different debate, because I think Daniel Farke probably would at the moment. I think Dean Smith will probably be a little bit more cautious with it. And that's not me saying Daniel Farke is right and Dean Smith is wrong. It's not me saying Dean Smith is right and Daniel Farke is wrong. But I think it's probably, if we're going on the way that Dean Smith has managed those young players, John Rowe, he obviously didn't hand the start to, even though there were some impressive cameos. He did start Tony Springett, but a lot of his action came from the bench as well. I think he'll be keen to adopt a more patient approach with him. It still wouldn't surprise me if come the end of the window he's out on loan somewhere, providing obviously Isaac Hayden is back fit and available. And I think there are still some elements to Liam Gibbs' game that's a bit raw still. So is he an option? Yes. Do I think he'll start? Probably not. But I really like him. And every time I watch him play, I seem to like him more. My type of footballer, someone who wants to get on the ball. It's worth adding as well that actually since he's moved to Norwich, they've kind of pushed him back into a deeper lying role. So Ipswich, he was a bit more of a 10 or 8.5, 10. And they've almost seen that actually, if they push him in a deeper role, he's someone that can dictate the pace of the play. And I think he's done that in the games that he's played and looked very impressive doing it. But it's one thing doing it in pre-season friendlies and in cup games, but also then doing it in the cut and thrust of a championship game. So I personally think, knowing and watching how Dean Smith has managed Norwich City for the last, 9-10 months, that he'll err on the side of caution and probably introduce him from the bench, if anything. But the fact we're having this conversation is testament to the work Liam Gibbs has done to close that gap, because he wasn't being spoken about by anyone before pre-season. And the fact that we are speaking to him as a potential option for game week 3 shows the work that he's put in, kind of off the pitch and on the pitch as well. And it's a huge credit to him, because I think most people look at him now and see a comment from Steve McDonald saying that he has a future, and he definitely does. But also he's an interesting one in the sense that he's going to be 20 by the time the season closes. So what you don't want him to do is get stuck in almost the position, stuck's maybe the wrong term, but be placed in the position that Adam Ida's been in for a little while, where he's kind of in that halfway house where he's probably a bit too good for the 23s, but also they don't want to send him out on loan. So at some point there's going to have to be a brave decision made where either he's thrown into the team and it's a case of, let's see if he can swim, basically, sort of fight or flight, or he heads out on loan and progresses that way. And we know that there'd be a queue of EFL clubs happy to take Liam Gibbs for the rest of the season. So I don't think that would be a major issue. At some point, a decision over that is going to have to be made. But for the here and now, I would expect, if Gabriel Sarri's fit, having got through an hour on Tuesday night, that it's probably most likely that we'll see him partner Kenny McLean and Marcelino Nunez in midfield tomorrow. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, I'll go back to when me and you went and spoke to him sort of the latter stages of last season. We've got like that little bit of an academy series, which anyone who's on the Pink and Plus can go back and watch. And I really was quite impressed by. He felt like a man with a very mature head on his shoulders. You know, he really kind of knows that it's going to take time maybe to make himself into that first team picture. But the fact he's managed to push himself in such a short period of time, and if it is a loan, then you got to feel that sort of mid to top end of League One is probably where he's going to be looking, which is testament to him, because he's never made a senior appearance until the other night. So, the Cardiff game obviously got his debut, but that was very short. So to get a sort of full senior debut against Birmingham in the Cup was good for him. I'm just going to pick up, where is the comment? Someone's referenced about Mumba, obviously on loan at Plymouth at the moment, doing quite well down there. I think got a man of the match in their opening game where they won 1-0. Here it is, Steve McDonald as well. Could they recall Mumba? Obviously a young man they sent out on loan. Is that something you could see them doing, Connor, or is there sort of a clause in the contract that they can't do that?
Yeah, so the honest answer is I don't know. I think the way these loan deals tend to work, they tend to be structured window to window. So I think you're less likely to have a recall option. But what you will have, and Norwich had it on Jordan Hugill, for example, is maybe a good one to cite. Last season, where everyone kind of sits down in January and assesses the loan and looks at where they are, and if they're happy to continue with it, whether they need to come back, whether they need to come back to then go out on loan. So I personally, and I've had nothing to suggest otherwise, that Norwich City are able to recall him back into the building, or whether they would want to recall him at this stage, because to be honest, it's a very good loan that he's got at the top end of League One. He obviously didn't struggle at Peterborough, but he was in a struggling team, so that maybe didn't help his development too much. He's playing as a wing back at Peterborough. There's a lot of license to go forward. Plymouth, sorry. There's a lot of license to go forward. As you say, some of his early performances have been very good. So almost you have to look at it at what's the greater good for the player. And I think actually for Barley Mumba, he's better served probably staying at Plymouth for this half of the season and seeing how he pushes on, rather than coming back to Norwich in this moment, in this time, and playing in that role. So, and also, I think he's probably a right back option rather than a left back option, if I'm being totally honest. So, again, I think it's one that, if it's possible, will have been considered. The fact that Dean Smith is talking about dipping into the market suggests to me that it's not plausible, or they feel he's not ready. And coupled with that, I think they're probably waiting for Sam Byram as well. So like I said, we're in this holding pattern where they're just kind of taking stock, taking a step back, looking at how the next 2 weeks develop in terms of Sam Byram's fitness, and then we'll get a clearer answer. But I don't see a situation where Barley Mumba returns to Norwich before the end of the transfer window, if I'm being totally honest. Again, could be proven totally wrong on that, but the fact it hasn't been mentioned by Dean or anyone else really probably suggests that it's not really an option. And that's not how these loans tend to work, really. As I said, they tend to work window to window.
So before we round off the show, Connor, and I asked for your score prediction, Elliot Pearson's given his 11 for tomorrow, but I'm just interested in your opinion on the goalkeeper situation. Obviously, we saw Angus Gunn pull off 2 very impressive saves the other night in terms of the penalties, and Tim Krul, sort of a little bit of a few question marks here and there over distribution in that early game against Cardiff. So, I mean, that's probably a position that a few fans will debate. Who's your starter tomorrow in goal? Is that going to be Krul or Gunn?
Yeah, before I answer that, really interesting shout from Elliot actually to have Campbell alongside McLean in midfield. I think that's not a bad shout at all actually, and one that we probably didn't consider when we were having that conversation a minute ago. Sonani also, we've seen him as an 8, so that's not beyond the realms. But at some stage, I think they're going to want to unleash Gabriel Sara, and I think it will probably be this weekend, if I'm being honest. On the goalkeeping point, yeah, I mean, towards the end of last season, it felt like Angus really closed the gap, didn't it? And obviously had that last day where Gunn was recalled, and I think it shocked everyone a little bit. I really like Tim Krul, and again, going back to maybe the way that we've seen Dean Smith build teams, and I've spoken about this before in the past, you tend to see actually that he likes quite an experienced spine to the team. So you tend to have Tim Krul as the goalkeeper, one of Grant Hanley or Ben Gibson in the back line, usually Kenny McLean in midfield, and usually Timu Pukki, and you've got your 4 up the pitch there that almost drive the team and drive the standards and are kind of your consistent performers, or look to be your consistent performers. I felt Tim obviously made a brilliant save. I think it was to Callum Lang, wasn't it, in the first half? I didn't think he couldn't do much with the goal, really. That was more an issue of what was in front of him. There was a couple of points at Cardiff where his distribution was pretty poor. He tried some kind of longer passes to Dimi Yanulis, I think it was, and didn't succeed with any of them. Angus obviously gives you that. So I've got to be honest, I don't think there's a lot between them, really. I think you'd probably edge Krul just about ahead. But again, the fact we're having this conversation is a testament to Angus Gunn and what he's done in the last 6 months or so, because at Christmas time, this wasn't a conversation. It was a case of kind of riding for Angus, kind of looking at when that point would come where he would overtake Krul. I think people can now see that as a real plausible alternative. So my answer is essentially, I don't think Tim Krul has done anything to not be included in the team at this moment in time. This is a debate, I'm sure, that will rear its head when he does make a mistake. And look, he's playing 46 games this season. That will happen at some stage. And then it will probably reopen and resurface. But in my mind, it feels like Dean Smith views Tim Krul very much as his number 1 at this moment in time. Obviously, there's a scenario down the track where, because the Championship comes back from the World Cup a little bit quicker, if Tim Krul is in the Netherlands squad, and he would likely be in the Netherlands squad as a 3rd choice, I would suggest at this stage, or maybe as a penalty killer, as Louis van Gaal has used him in the past, then there is a situation where Norwich restart whilst Tim is still away in Qatar. So that would then create a natural opportunity for Angus Gunn. So that is where I see really the possible changeover, barring obviously any injury or any loss of form. But at this moment in time, as I said, I think Dean Smith crucially sees Tim Krul as his 1st choice, and Angus Gunn having closed the gap and providing some really good competition. But it's a really good level for Norwich City's goalkeeping department to be at, I think, when you compare it to probably a few years ago, where there was probably Krul, and then, again, not to be disrespectful to Michael McGovern, but probably a bigger drop between the standard of the 2 goalkeepers they had compared to now. So, yeah, I think Tim Krul will start tomorrow.
And to round off the show, obviously, we've, Norwich yet to register an actual victory in 90 minutes, and obviously yet to register their first 3 points of the season. And it feels like they probably need that first 3 points just to get over that hangover from last season and just settle down the fan base, knowing that they've first, got that first 3 points on the board. So with that, Elliot Pearson's asked the question, and I was going to ask it anyway. How do you sort of see this one going, Connor, and in terms of a prediction as well?
Yeah, I think it'll be a tight game. I can see Norwich having a lot of the ball. I can see Hull being a threat on the counter. I think they've got some good ball players in their side. We mentioned Seri and Tufan. If they can get Tufan going, I think they've got a very good player there. But again, he maybe epitomises where they are with the Turkish players in that don't really know if they're going to be hit or miss yet. I can see it being a tight game. So I can also see Norwich winning. So I'm going to edge for a 2-1 Norwich. What about you, Adam?
Yeah, I said it yesterday on Terrace Talk, which anyone who's on the Pinker Plus app can go back and watch. And Yeah, I went 2-1 as well. I think I said Norwich were going to take the lead, Hull were going to peg them back, and then it was going to be a scrappy late goal. Not going to name a player because last time I named a player on one of these shows, I said Hanley was going to score a late winner and he got sent off. So yeah, I'm not going to be putting a name to any goal scorers, but in the sense of that, yeah, quite hopeful tomorrow. I feel like maybe the corner's going to turn. Sort of the performances over the last couple of games have been much more progressive and encouraging. So feel like the tide's going to turn and Norwich are going to get the win. So with that, we'll round off the show. Obviously, all your pre-match coverage is all over the Pinker and the Pinker Plus app at the moment. You've got the Dean Smith press conference video. Sam's Tactics board video is literally about to go live in 20 minutes time as well. So anyone on Pinker Plus can go and watch that. And Terrace Talk as well from yesterday evening with the Hull City fan. That's available as well. And obviously we've got all your written articles as well that are there. And me, yourself, Paddy and Sam are travelling up to Hull tomorrow afternoon, so we'll all be there to cover the game. So for all your sort of usual analysis and reaction from this one, and yeah, fingers crossed for Norwich's sake they can get the first 3 points, and anyone that's travelling up has a safe journey because it can be a bit of a difficult one to get to Hull. So yeah, fingers crossed, better than the last couple of times they've travelled up there, and they can actually try and go for the win. So I think we'll round it off there. Enjoy the rest of your Friday, enjoy your weekend, whatever you're getting up to, and yeah, keep hydrated and away from the sun because I think it's sort of 32-degree heat over the weekend, which is probably not good for you, Carl.
No, I've got the wrong hair colour for this time of year. To be honest, I try and stay out of the sun, which is why I'm in a nice air-conditioned room in our office, which is a bit of relief. Yeah, I get quite grumpy at this time of the year. I have to be honest. I don't deal with heat. Bring on winter, I say, Adam. Perfect time for a World Cup.
It is, yeah. And I suppose the only upside is that the pool cars have got very good aircon. That's one thing we've learned. I remember that trip to Cambridge in pre-season. We all sort of left the pool car and the heat just hit us like an oven. So I have a feeling it might be like that tomorrow. Hopefully we'll get a little bit of breeze off the Humber, and that might be quite nice at the back of the stand there tomorrow. So as I said, enjoy the rest of your Friday, enjoy your weekend, and stay safe.